Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Okay, let the record show that we have a quorum. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 15th, 2006. Do I have a second?
Second.
On a question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First item then we have tonight is a presentation and final report. This is on the Wooddale Station area. And originally, I believe Phil was supposed to be here, Hanegraaff, HNTB, but he's not, so can I get, I'm sorry, can I have your name again? Diane Barnes will be doing the presentation. Diane, please come up. You can sit at the table here.
I know that Joe Vasha from the RTA was also planning to be here. You may come in. Oh, you are here, okay, I'm sorry, I looked all around and I didn't see that.
Okay. Yeah, it's Diane Barnes. She's from HNTB.
Okay, all right. Is this picking up my voice? Is this working?
They'll adjust it so it will.
Closer? Okay. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening. We were asked to come and make a presentation to the full council now that the station area study that we've been working on for a little bit over a year with the city has now concluded. By way of a little bit of background, we were selected, HNTB Corporation was selected to assist the city starting early in 2005, I believe the selection process began, to work on an RTAP grant, which is an RTA-funded grant program, the Regional Technical Assistance Program grant program. The RTA had awarded the city some funding to take a look at the area immediately surrounding the station area. I believe this is the first, yeah, that works out well. The study area for this study was technically a half-mile radius around the metro station, but it encompassed the entire area that's being looked at as part of the intersection feasibility study that CTE is working on. And so the reasoning, I think, at the city was that this was a good fit to be able to look at some of the redevelopment and urban design improvement potentials in this area in conjunction with that intersection feasibility study while that was still going on, to sort of aid in the decision process related to that. And so we were invited to share the outcome of that study this evening with you. We worked on several of these RTA studies, and we always identify the half-mile radius because we take a look at the existing conditions and the relationship of that area to the station area. But as you'll see when I get into the presentation, the recommendations that we made, the more detailed recommendations, really focus, particularly on that intersection area. They don't address the single-family neighborhoods and the area extending over to Salt Creek at the west, as you'll see. As we've noted in the public meetings that we've held throughout the course of the process, the objective of this study was to help the city to identify the best future roadway alignment of the three that are being most carefully considered for the town center area, based on some broader criteria: the ability to reinforce the station area as the community's downtown in the future, to plan for and redirect and direct redevelopment as desired by the community, to facilitate better access to Metra and to other potential future transit services, be they dial-a-ride or PACE services that might serve the area in the future, to facilitate pedestrian and bicycle access, and to improve the overall image and appearance of the area, to begin to take a look at how that might be staged or implemented as the intersection work ensues. As with all of the RTA studies that we work on, we look at it from the basis of transit-oriented development. The reason that the RTA funds these studies is obviously there's a clear benefit to the communities in revitalizing areas around the stations, but there's also a benefit from the transit side in terms of potentially boosting ridership, and that's really the reasoning behind it. There are really three basic principles of TOD: design, diversity, and density that we look at. Design is related to the ability to make connections and provide amenities for transit users, being able to design the area with a preference for pedestrians and bicyclists who both want to use the station but also want to use the commercial areas surrounding it, and the ability to reduce off-street parking and create shared parking areas. In terms of diversity, we mean mixed uses and varied types of housing that can serve a variety of residents of the community that might benefit from being in close proximity to transit and to commercial services. Integrating public spaces into the area, and in this case we integrated in each scenario that we developed a major public plaza, because we heard a lot from the community about the need to have a place where the community could gather. And that it be market driven, that it needs to serve more than just commuters, but it certainly is a benefit to commuters. From the density side, the appropriate thing for communities to do is look at providing their higher density housing alternatives, condos and townhomes and things of that nature, closest to the train station. So that minimizes the impact in terms of traffic generation and things like that on the rest of the community. But balancing, of course, those higher densities with open spaces. And then that also, in turn, is a benefit to the business community, because the more residents there are in close proximity to commercial areas, the more support there's going to be for those local businesses. So very briefly, the study began, I think we had our kickoff meeting in about the middle of April of '05. We conducted key person interviews for a couple days here at City Hall in 2005. We talked to about somewhere between 25 and 30 residents. And a couple of the aldermen at that time, and the mayor as well, to get some initial ideas. And in conjunction with that, we were doing our background research, our land use studies and condition studies. We then, in the middle of July, held a community workshop, and we conducted a visual preference survey at that time. Actually, you'll see a couple slides from now some of the outcomes of that visual preference survey. And we put together those findings in the first report that we did as part of the study, the Inventory and Vision Memorandum that was circulated in September. The steering committee met and discussed that. We had a steering committee that was comprised of Mayor Johnson, Alderman Ptolemy, and representatives of the Chamber of Commerce and residents. And I believe that in the final report on the first or second page in the acknowledgments, there's a listing of the members of that committee. After we had talked about the overall vision for the area and the general goals that we had developed based on the public input we received, we developed 3 scenarios, which I'll talk a little bit about. Met again in November about those and got some feedback from the committee on those, and then prepared some 3D visualizations of those, which again you'll see a little bit later. And that was all as preparation for a major community meeting that was held in March. We held that in conjunction with IDOT. They had a public meeting scheduled for the intersection study at I believe, the junior high school. And we were part of that meeting as well. We had our materials there and invited public comment from people at that time. Based on that input, we prepared the final report that you've received and have taken a look at it, I believe. Just to quickly show you a little bit about what we did in the first stages of the study, we did some existing conditions analysis, and as part of the first report, we talked a little bit about the locational framework, what regional influences there are surrounding Wooddale that would impact the market here for commercial, and some of the other kind of movement patterns. We looked at land use on a parcel-by-parcel basis so that we would have an accurate and up-to-date assessment of the land use conditions in the area. We looked at environmental issues and mapped those with some data we received from the county. We took a look at a very cursory level at the zoning that's currently in place in this area and provided some preliminary suggestions about the kinds of adjustments that might need to be made in the development regulations to accommodate some of the ideas in the plan. And we looked also at access, circulation, and parking. You can see in this graphic, for example, the Metro line running through at an angle here. And then this is Irving Park Road, the major regional arterial, Wooddale running north and south, and then some of the major collector streets that feed into Wooddale and Irving Park that fall within that study area. We summarized some of those ideas in a planning and opportunities map, and you can see here, we'll be talking more about this obviously later on, but at the conclusion of that memo, we alluded to the 2 alignments that we were going to be looking at. Alignment 2, which drops Irving Park down below the train tracks, and then it sort of hugs the Metro line to the north side and comes back to the old alignment in this location. And then 2A, which swings it a little bit further to the north. And then the third alternative that we were looking at was the no-build alternative, which is what the city might want to look at doing in the area if neither of those alignments comes to fruition. This is just an image that shows you a little bit about the preferred images in the survey that we conducted in the first public meeting that we had. We provided a series of images and people ranked them based on how appropriate they thought they might be for Wooddale. And in the report, we talk a little bit about the results of that. And these are some of the images, a sampling of the images that received the highest ratings. A number of attractive commercial buildings, landscaped pocket parks and plaza types of spaces, townhomes and condominiums, both condominium buildings and condominiums with retail on the ground floor that were seen as very positive by the community. We also had a sub-consultant, Valerie Kretschmer, who worked with us on this early phase of the study and prepared a market analysis. And I apologize that this is not very visible, but it is included in the final report. And it's her summary as she sees it today, or as she saw it, I should say, back in late 2005 when she completed her study, what the short-term or near-term redevelopment potential in the town center is. And we used that as sort of a stepping off point when we looked at our scenarios and developed them. We showed more redevelopment in the areas than she saw in the short term because we realized that this is going to be a very long-term process. The redevelopment of the area could potentially take 15 to 20 years overall, and we didn't want to be limited simply by what she saw as the near term, but saw those as trends that could move further into the future. We summarized all of the background information and input into an overall vision and goals that we reviewed with the committee. What we heard from the public was that they want this area to be a source of community pride and to be seen as a true center for the community, to have kind of a cohesive identity. They talked a lot about the issue of displacement, which I know there's different impacts related to displacement with the different alignments. But we did hear a lot of that discussion in our meetings. Attractive landscaped environment. They were reacted very positively to examples of development that had a lot of green space and a lot of lush landscaping as part of it. Not too urbanized with everything paved and all sidewalks everywhere, but a lot of green space inserted into the area. Pedestrian and bicycle friendly connections to adjacent neighborhoods so that when there are more commercial businesses here, it'll be easy for people in adjacent neighborhoods to reach those areas without having to get into a car. And then the importance of gateway features. And the kinds of uses they wanted to see were mixed use and commercial buildings. We saw some images of those. Retail, service, and office businesses, a major public plaza, smaller scale seating areas throughout the area, not just the one major public plaza, but places where people could sit down, park their bicycles, relax in the shade and as they were out shopping and conducting other business. Improvements to the metro station and the possibility of sharing some parking so that there could be more commuter parking, but it could also be used at other times and not just sit empty on the weekends. And then a variety of housing types. We took those goals and basically set up a series of evaluation factors so that when we created the 3 scenarios that we created, we could assess them as to how well they met the goals of the community. And those are described in more detail, obviously, in the report. But we put together 30 factors that we wanted to evaluate scenarios based upon that input we received. At that point, we set about developing the 3 scenarios. Accommodating the uses and the plaza space and other elements that people had said they wanted to see, and then assess the ability of each of those to really meet the city's goals. The first of these, I'll go through them as quickly as I can, was the redevelopment scenario 1, which was the no build. In other words, if the roadways were to remain as they are today, Irving Park, still an at-grade crossing, Wooddale as it is today, and then the frontage road connection that allows people who are going westbound on Irving Park to continue northbound on Wooddale without having to cross the tracks. But essentially the roadway network remaining the same. In each of the scenarios, you'll see areas that are defined by this pink color. This is the areas that we designated as town center mixed use, meaning that those are the prime areas where redevelopment we feel could potentially occur to sort of intensify the built environment in those areas, to add residential, add additional commercial uses, and create more of a walkable kind of environment. Obviously, in the no-build scenario, you still have all the challenges with the traffic congestion and the difficulty of crossing the tracks that you have today. But if the decision is made to leave the roadway as it is, there are still, even despite those challenges, some pretty significant redevelopment opportunities. This is simply a diagram that shows a little bit more what that roadway network is, where those existing grade crossings are, and if redevelopment occurs in each of these quadrants, where the main access points for those areas would probably want to be. And then this is a rendering. The colors are a little bit muddy here, but gives you an idea of where we're suggesting that redevelopment occur. There's an opportunity, we feel, for a major redevelopment that would occur at the northwest corner of Wooddale and Commercial, where there would be more commercial and also some upper story condominiums potentially. And this is the location in the no-build alternative that we would propose a major public plaza be located. That's in conjunction, in putting it in this quadrant, it's in conjunction with the city facility that's already here to the north and the aquatics facility, and it all could be very well integrated together. Also, some areas here where the city has begun to acquire some property, there could be some retail and some upper story office or condominium occurring there as well. Once that were to happen and some businesses could potentially relocate to that area, there'd be the ability to add some mixed-use development on the south side as well. At this Division Street entrance where the Depot Shopping Center is currently, a very long-term idea there might be for the owners of that property to look at a multi-story building on that location instead of just a single-story shopping center. And as well, the owners of property along Irving Park might begin to consider that as well. The areas that are red indicate existing commercial areas that would remain, that wouldn't see significant redevelopment in this scenario. The focus of the city would be on these immediate quadrants around the intersection. But certainly infill development and physical improvements to those buildings could also be recommended. So again, the priority areas would be northwest and northeast to allow for the ability to create some commercial space that existing businesses south of the tracks could move into to allow for later phases. But as I said, the existing access and visibility challenges that you have today are going to remain if the no-build scenario is the one that you go with. Future residential trends as well are going to impact the final build out. In the scenarios, we assumed for the most part condominium development, but I know you've had a lot of success lately with townhome development, and just kind of depending on where the market goes, there may be, the market may be more in tune with townhomes and want at some of the perimeter areas of these scenarios to look at doing townhomes in lieu of condominiums, but that can certainly be accommodated. So just to give you a little bit of idea of scale, and this was mostly to be able to compare one to the other, what you just saw in this rendering represents an additional 187 or so residential units and net new commercial space of about 183,000 square feet. Net new meaning that obviously a lot of the existing commercial would be replaced by new, but the net increase would be 183. After we completed our committee meeting and got some consensus on the scenarios, we went through the exercise of creating some 3D models of them, which were presented at the March meeting. And these are just a few examples of that to be able to give the community a little better sense of the scale of the buildings and how they might look in the area. We superimpose those over existing aerial images. I believe I have 2 of each of these to show you. But there are more that were included in the materials that were provided to the city. Alignment 2, or scenario number 2, shows what could potentially happen if Alignment 2 were to be put in place, where Irving Park, just as after you cross Salt Creek, as you all well know, would drop under the Metro line, come back to a new intersection, essentially where the Commercial Street intersection is now, and then Irving Park would continue to the east and go back to its existing alignment. In this case, we saw the opportunity for a town center to be located south of the tracks and to create a pretty significant area for redevelopment. If you think about it, once Irving Park swings to the north and that regional traffic is swinging to the north at that location, the existing section of Irving Park here will be essentially obsolete. So the idea here would be over the long term to eliminate that section of road and instead have a new boulevard that would come down and meet Wooddale at this location, meet up where Division Street currently meets up with Wooddale, and create a continuous roadway there. And there would be a right-in, right-out connection along at Irving Park at this location for people who are coming east to be able to do that. This would displace the existing commercial businesses that are south of Irving Park, but it would not displace any of the residential uses that are further to the south. And it would also necessitate the relocation of the post office. So again, here's sort of a diagram of that, a more general looking at the access issues, and a rendering of it. In this case, because Irving Park is going to see most of the regional traffic, the commercial redevelopment that would happen to the north would be more auto-oriented. It would still have pretty significant parking areas associated with it, although we would want to see them kind of back to the rear of the building so that the frontage along Irving Park was more attractive. And then the major public plaza would be located down here to the south at the new Boulevard and Wooddale intersection. This would be the more community-focused area, more walkable with smaller scale businesses and condominiums above and a community gathering space. And it would be in conjunction with some improvements to the metro station. Again, in the implementation of this, the priorities would be probably to the north to be able to provide some space that could be occupied by some of the local businesses who would need to relocate. Once the old Irving Park became obsolete, the access to those businesses is going to be pretty much eliminated for regional traffic, and so they're going to be looking to move to those north locations. As I said, there would be access to that old Irving Park Road, but there wouldn't be nearly as much traffic there. So the access and visibility would be impacted for including the Depot Shopping Center when the road swings to the north, and the post office would have to be relocated. In this situation, we were looking at more new residential, 375 units, primarily south of the tracks in that new town center area, and then net new commercial, about 132,000 square feet. And these are some images. This is looking to the southeast. The station is over here, Division Street and Wooddale, and then this is the new boulevard that would be lined with some new buildings. There'd be a plaza at the corner, new buildings that had commercial on the ground floor, and potentially a parking structure behind that to accommodate shoppers and also residents. And then these red buildings here are just the single-story commercial buildings that would be located along Irving Park Road. And another view looking to the west this time. Final scenario was, the third scenario was alignment 2A, where, as you know, again, that the road swings pretty far to the north, and the prime location for some significant redevelopment in this case, obviously, is that space then that's remaining between the new Irving Park Road and the Metro line. Wooddale would still be an at-grade crossing, but you would travel some distance north before you actually got to the intersection with Irving Park. So in this case, the mixed-use development would occur in this area, and all the redevelopment that would occur to the south would really, over the long term, probably be residential rather than commercial. At this main intersection, I should note as well, this would be a significant intersection signalized at this location. There could be some new auto-oriented commercial at that corner, because that would be the easiest place for regional traffic to get in and out. Again, the access diagram and the rendering. This area would be large enough that there could potentially be a fairly significant internal road system. There could be a couple of key entrances into the area at existing intersection locations where there are existing streets coming down from the north into a sort of a boulevard system within there. Down in this location, this is the metro station, and so this would allow for a new sort of a boulevard entry into the area where the platforms and the metro station would be, and the potential for some commuter parking to be located to the north of the tracks, so that people coming along Irving Park to access the metro station wouldn't have to go south across the tracks to get to the parking area. Priority areas, again, would be some development here and some development here. It remains to be seen. There'd be a lot of logistics associated with it, of course, but there would be potential for some of this redevelopment, and even in this area, to potentially occur in advance of the roadway alignment, once you're certain exactly where that road's going to be going through. But there will be issues, of course, with during construction, whether development in that area would have adequate access and businesses would want to be located there. It might be that that it would be necessary to wait until the road is in place, just because it's going to be such a hardship for businesses trying to operate in that area. In this scenario, and you'll see an update to this that I'll talk about that we came up with after this meeting, this scenario assumed that Irving Park would remain as it was in this old section. Right now, Irving Park comes straight through this way. And as you can see, this entire section right where the Depot Shopping Center is now would cease to exist. But this little section could remain. If that were to happen, though, this area would probably transition to residential use, because there would essentially be no regional visibility or traffic on that section of the road if there isn't a connection made at this end. So in this scenario, that access was not provided, and then there's a significant loss of access and visibility for businesses in that area. This shows significant new residential, 664 units potentially, primarily because there was a lot of residential redevelopment shown in this area, and then there's upper story condominiums here. And then 175, give or take, a net new commercial. So this focuses on that area where Irving Park would come in. We would suggest it as a boulevard with a planted median, as you get further into this with CTE, to make sure that they are looking at that as a very attractive boulevard kind of cross-section that has a landscape median. But then to be able to enter in at a couple locations into this internal roadway system where there would be stores and activity right along the street. It would be very walkable. These would be slow, 25, 20 mile an hour type of streets, and there'd be parking right on them. So it would be more of a traditional kind of shopping environment once you got into that area. And again, here's a view just looking north, so you can see as well, that there could be some auto-oriented commercial at this corner up on this side, and potentially some parking structures to accommodate residents in that area. This is impossible to read, I know, but at the conclusion of the second report, we took those three scenarios and we evaluated them with those criteria that we had developed to talk to the committee about the potential advantages and disadvantages of each. And that, as I said, is available in that second report. Let me make sure I'm not leaving anything out here. Essentially, the outcome of that was we had 30 evaluation factors, and we saw scenario 1, which is no build, as rating positive on 15 of them. But it has some significant drawbacks. Obviously, you don't solve your traffic problems, and you're somewhat limited in the areas that you can redevelop. Scenario 2 and scenario 3 measured pretty similarly, 22 and 25 positive factors, but they all had the challenges that I've alluded to. How to phase the construction so that businesses can continue to operate in the area, and can, if they wish to, remain in the area and then potentially be relocated within the area at the appropriate time. One of the things that our market analyst as well said that it will be important to accommodate residential development in the early phases to sort of lead the retail market, to add more people in the area, which is going to continue to build up the demand for retail space, and make it a stronger business environment. Connections to Metra are difficult really in any scenario. We really had a challenge because of the configuration of the station and the existing entrance to it off of Division Street, how to really make connections to Metra easier. Alignment 2A probably allows for the best improvements in that regard, because you could add some parking and a new entrance to the station area from the north, but it continues to be difficult in those other scenarios. And it's challenging as well to create pedestrian and bicycle access, because Irving Park is still going to be a very high traffic roadway, and it's going to be even wider after it's redeveloped than it is now. At the conclusion of that meeting, and after the March 8th meeting, everything that you've seen up to this point was presented to the community in March. And as I think you probably talked about in the interim, there was not as much turnout at that public meeting as we had hoped for. And we got a little bit of public feedback, but not as much as we had hoped to get. We got some some folks who wanted to see the no-build scenario, some who preferred alignment 2, and some who preferred alignment 2A. It was kind of an even mix. But we took the comments that we received and we talked a little bit about them further. The final report then compiled the two redevelopment scenarios into one. So the final report that you saw includes the no-build scenario, essentially as you had seen it before, and then what we call the preferred development scenario, still showing alignment 2A, but also showing the redevelopment that could potentially occur to the south. So it was a kind of a combination of the north half of one and the south half of the other into a composite that had the positive elements and redevelopment potential that the committee thought they wanted to reflect in the final plan. So there were some refinements made to the graphics at that point related to that. And then a revised rendering was created. In this case, we're still showing the public plaza occurring here to the north. So a little bit of adjustment's been made here to really make this more of a local commuter and resident-oriented commercial area. And some of the larger scale commercial would still happen here where it can easily be accessed from Irving Park. But this area now also includes retail and not just residential as it did in the initial report. And then we interspersed some images again from that preference survey and some other sources that kind of give an idea of the scale and the appearance of the development that might occur in those areas. The priority is still those areas to the north, but now in this scenario, that right-in, right-out access is provided because of still the issue of losing that access and visibility south once Irving Park has gone to the north. In this scenario, then as well, the post office, which is currently in this location right here, would need to relocate, and our suggestion would be that it move right across the street, still be at that intersection, but be on the east side of the street to allow, as you come to the north, sort of a gateway of institutional uses and then coming into an area where there's retail on both sides. This scenario shows about 775 units of residential and significantly more net new commercial, about 278,000 square feet of new commercial, because we have combined redevelopment on the north and redevelopment on the south. In addition to this, then, in the final report, we talked a little bit about implementation issues. And for the most part, these are implementation strategies that are going to be, that you'll need to consider regardless of the alignment, whether it's the no-build or 2 or 2A or some other composite that CTE will develop. The implementation strategies are going to be very similar in terms of setting the stage for that in the coming years before the bulldozers arrive. A number of administrative tasks that we suggest you consider, including the creation